Perfect. All right.
Beautiful.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I'll wait till you lean back up. That's fine. You ready to go now?
No.
No, you're still never ready to go. Okay. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome
Now
to...
I'm ready.
Oh, God. Okay. All right. And there it is. All right. Take 3. All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode number 70 of the Board Game Gateway podcast. I am Neva, and I'm your host for today's episode, whenever you happen to be listening to it. And sitting around the table with me are two of my co-hosts. Once again, on my left, I have Mr. Damien.
Hello.
And on the right, I have Mr. Leo.
Hey.
We are Joel-less and Ralph-less once again. They are both caught up with personal life. Ralph, he is going through a big time at the moment. He's about to have his second child, so fair enough. Like he will
got a good reason.
He will try to be here for as much as he can be, but let's be honest, he's probably not going to be back for a little bit, so that's okay. But we do have some of his comedy to bring up later in the episode, which is great. And Joel as well is just super busy at the moment as well. He hopes to be back shortly as well. If this is the first time that you're listening to the Board Game Gateway podcast, we are your entryway into the world of board gaming, tabletop gaming, and fun times. And on tonight's episode, we are going to be chatting about a couple of games. Our gateway game of the week this week is Wilmot's Warehouse, out here in front of us. We are going to be talking about Clans of Caledonia. We're going to be having a chat about Search for Planet X, and Damien's going to share with us his thoughts, his early impressions on the Elder Scrolls board game.
Very early
impressions
yes.
on the Elder Scrolls board game. And then we're going to get into our featured topic tonight, which is our top 3 predictions for 2025. That's going to be our top. We're kind of excited to share with you our predictions for that. Some comedy, some not comedy. We'll see how we go at that point. But first up, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get straight into our discussions, though. We're going to start with Damien. We're going to start with you and your initial thoughts on the Elder Scrolls. Please tell the people about it, about what the monstrous package that arrived at your door. And let's go from there. Let's start with the Elder Scrolls, hey?
So I got a very, very pleasant surprise when the better part of 12.5 kilos worth of board game
Holy
arrived.
cow.
Of cardboard and plastic.
This is just
Wow.
one board game. And yes, there is an expansion in there, but the expansion is, I don't know, about a centimeter thick. It's tiny, and it's just a neoprene mat with a few cards and a couple extra chips. But Elder Scrolls, the full title is Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era.
Is this the same IP as the old video game?
Yes.
Elder Scrolls?
Yes.
Great.
So it is the Elder Scrolls IP. It is a brand new story, though, which definitely riffs off some of the previous stories there. So, for instance, you've got sort of known areas such as Black Marsh, Skyrim, stuff like that. But what the game actually is Chip Theory Games' recently fulfilled game. So it is, in true Chip Theory Games glory, a big box of lots of neoprene, lots of plastic cards and stuff. But essentially what the game is, it's an adventure game. It's an RPG adventure game. And for anyone who's played Chip Theory Games before, the best way I can explain it for anyone who is familiar with their games is it is Too Many Bones mixed with Hoplomachus. So Too Many Bones was an earlier game by Chip Theory Games where you would take an adventurer called a Gearlock. Your Gearlock would be a specific class, and you would have dice that you could then unlock. And then but the game was essentially just a boss battler. So you would go round after round, fighting minions, till eventually you fought a boss. And throughout the way, you are upgrading your Gearlock, unlocking dice, and the hope that you get to the final boss in time to then be able to just roll a fistful of dice and just do either a ton of damage or play a really great support role, so on and so forth. But there wasn't really a great deal of adventuring. It was just you set up the map and you go. Even movement was typically restrained to a 4x4 grid.
Yeah, it wasn't a huge arena of
No.
It was more about the combat than the adventuring.
Now, certain standalone expansions of Too Many Bones introduced new mechanics such as maps that could get damaged as the game went on. But again, there still was the game was less about movement and was more about having the right combination of gearlocks. Hoplomachus, on the other hand, is Chip Theory Games' first game. Please do not quote me on that, because I know it's a bit, depending on who the designer was, would depend whether it was their first game. It certainly is one of their oldest games. And what this one is you are playing a gladiator typically, and you would have an arena, and that arena minions would come into the arena, and you would have to fight the minions. And with some of their more recent reimplementations of Hoplomachus, you would have an adventurer, and your adventurer would then pick up your own squad of minions that you could then use. That one was more positional, but it introduced this kind of like but it's positional within the realms of an arena. Fast forward to Elder Scrolls. Elder Scrolls brings in the best of both, because what it does, it has very, very similar character creation and sort of advancement, similar to Too Many Bones. It has the same kind of map and movement mechanics that you would find in Hoplomachus, but more.
Right.
I have only begun to scratch the surface of this game, and I definitely will come back and talk about it more in a few weeks once I've had more time to play with it. But the general premise of the game is you pick a hero. Your hero has a class. It has a skill card, and you basically pick where you want to start. So, for instance, I've only really adventured through Black Marsh, which is one of the older regions in the Elder Scrolls world.
So that's not Morrowind. Like Morrowind is Morrowind, isn't it? Or is
Morrowind's in there as well?
Right. Okay.
So
that's the one I remember.
Yeah. And essentially what happens is that you start at a town, and you're given this map. And the map, if you have a look at it, it will have other towns. It will have empty spaces where random events could occur, and or there could be events where peaceful events will occur. Sorry, spaces where peaceful events could occur, and then spaces where essentially a fight will occur. Or you will also have caves and dungeons to explore and things like that.
Very Elder Scroll-y kind of.
Very Elder Scrolls-like. And your goal for each scenario is you have 12 days, and you have to achieve whatever the objective for that scenario is.
Yeah.
And your objective is determined by the guild card that you draw at the beginning of the game. Again, very Elder Scrolls-like, where a lot of the times your gameplay will often be dictated by the various guilds that you want to join.
Okay.
Unlike Too Many Bones, where you have a fixed upgrade path, it's not the case with Elder Scrolls. You pick your class, you pick your ability. If you go to a town and you go see one of the trainers at the town for the various abilities that may be on offer, and if you like one of their abilities, change it. It's fine. It's great.
Cool.
It's very, very cool. There are a ton of ways in which the game limits how many dice you have. There is a whole upgrade system. There is this fantastic battle mechanic where, similar to Too Many Bones, your agility would be your determining factor on how many dice you can roll, how much you can move. That's still very much here. But the other thing that exists is sort of positional attacking is very, very important. How you use your dice when you miss is also available here. So in Too Many Bones, a miss was you would take the die and you'd store it in your bones row, and then you would get a one-off special ability that then will allow you to exhaust those dice. This has that here as well.
Is there much of a story in this one? Or
There
is. Okay, so it's taking what some people may not have liked about Too Many Bones if you're after a bit more of a story, but like the system.
This has a ton of story. Like I said, it's 12.5 kilos and it's mostly cards.
Oh wow.
There is a lot of text on here. There is a lot of story. My favorite mechanic, which I've only experienced once so far, which again ties into the story, will be a random what they call a delve, which is where you jump into a dungeon.
Yeah.
And the way it actually works is the first card will say, okay, you draw, you basically pull out this bit of neoprene and says, you start here. You reveal the neoprene. It's got certain icons on it. And then when you get near the next icon, you says, okay, well, you draw the next card. And
have
it
you
tells
played
you
Path of Exile?
No.
This is literally one of the main mechanics out of what they had in Path of Exile, which is a Diablo style third party, brawler. And this is literally, they have what they call delving, which is basically a mini dungeon, which you can then do a run through to try and get as far into the dungeon and then you can get out and go, well, I've got this amount of treasure on this run. I'm not going to risk it. So you can, it's like push your luck. I can keep going. I can go but once you go to the next one, you can't pull out. You've got to either fight your way through that successfully or bugger out. Sort of thing.
This is very much like that. And in fact, there's two types of dungeons. There's one where you have an objective. And then there's another one. You keep going until basically you either reach the end of the dungeon and you get a really cool, like it could be a reward or a series of chests and things like that, or you just bail. You say I've achieved enough, and you go. The game still has sort of lock picking, which is a thing from Too Many Bones, where you roll dice to try and like unlock cards and stuff. So it has all those usual tropes. But what I will say, and I'm gonna kind of end it there because, to be fair, to do the game justice, I really, really want to play it more.
Okay.
But this has so much variability, so much replayability. It is still different to Too Many Bones, but I will say if anyone is out there who has played Too Many Bones, thought it was okay, maybe has played Hoplomachus, thought it was okay. Like, for instance, I didn't like Hoplomachus.
Which we have a previous episode of us talking about it here on the podcast.
Yeah. But I have really enjoyed playing Too Many Bones in the past. This game is just pulls the best out of both of them and just goes to town. I can't say anything but positive things about this game. It is brilliant.
So we'll leave it there because obviously this is your first impression.
Yeah.
But that is
got to check back in and see.
I was going to say it sounds like it's a pretty positive start. So I'm keen to check back in and see once you've got a few more under your belt, see how we go.
Yeah, I will say for anyone who's following, for any of our listeners not on our Facebook group, please join. But I will be following my campaign. I currently have a dark elf who specializes in necromancy.
Love that.
It's going to be great.
And you're playing it solo?
I'm playing it
you
solo.
You just have one character?
Just one
use?
character.
Okay.
I am curious to know how the balancing works. I've been critical in the past of some of Chip Theory games where playing solo, you still have to play two-handed because playing true solo, the balance never felt quite right.
Right.
So far, the balance feels good. But I want to get through to some of the more advanced scenarios, and then we'll see.
Okay. Well,
sounds awesome.
We'll definitely make sure that we check back in with you within a month or two once we have gotten it. I don't think it's left your table yet. It's still packed.
No, it's still set up.
Yeah, it's still set up and playing.
I will say for anyone who I just want to prepare people. The rulebook is 96 pages long. I spent a lot of time. I have read that cover to cover. There is a lot of content out there.
Did you have to read it cover to cover, or could you have gotten started with a shorter amount?
Get an AI summary?
Yeah, you can. Like there is sort of like a tutorial mission where it gets you started.
Search Board Game Geek for the rule summary.
Yeah,
exactly.
But the rule book is extremely well written.
Okay, that's good.
It's definitely come a long way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right, fantastic. Anyway, so that was Damien's first impressions on the Elder Scrolls. What was the name of the campaign again?
Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era.
Betrayal of the Second Era. There you go. Anyway, so we're going to be moving now from our first impressions to the games that we've been playing this week. We're going to start this week with Mr. Leo. You've got a game that you've been playing, which we have talked about in the podcast before. This was close to probably 18 months ago that we talked about. It was a long time ago, which was Search for Planet X. You've been playing that one a bit.
Yeah. I played it for the first time a few weeks ago, and I was just so impressed by how unique a game it is and how enjoyable it was to play. I was very skeptical for various reasons, which I'll tell you now. So Search for Planet X, I think it was designed and published in 2020. It is a game of logic and deduction. So your role is you are an astronomer, a researcher, and you're trying to basically locate, you're trying to search through space and locate Planet X. And the way you're going to do that is by following a set of logic rules, and you're competing against all the other players to find Planet X first.
Yep.
Some of the reasons I thought I wouldn't like this game as much, it does have an app tie-in that you almost always need to... I mean, you can get away without it because there is like a downloadable print and play thing that you can use if you really don't want to use the app, but that's just going out of your way to make it difficult. Just use the app. I was skeptical. I'm skeptical of that because I like games to have longevity and to not rely on technology.
Yep.
In this case, the reliance on the technology is for a very, very good reason, right? The app plays as the game master.
Yeah.
So essentially, the app will do the random game design. It will determine, okay, so just to explain the game mechanics a little bit, there are a number of sectors, right, that you have to look for Planet X in.
There is an easy mode and a hard mode as well.
There
so
is
you can
indeed
play-
a normal, a standard mode and an expert mode. So the expert mode just adds an additional 6 or so sectors.
Yeah, it makes it 12, I believe.
No, it goes from 12 to 18.
Oh, it does.
So,
yeah, okay.
and each sector has to have an object in it, like some sort of celestial object. So it could be an asteroid, it could be a comet, it could be a dwarf planet, right? Or it could be Planet X. So your job is to deduce which celestial object is in which sector to the point where you figure out exactly where Planet X is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the trick is that, like a good logic game, there's a bunch of constraints that help you to deduce where, different things are. So you might say, okay, asteroids can only come in groups of either 2, where there have to be 2 groups of 2 together, or it's 1 group of 4 that are consecutive next to each other. So it's rules like that which sort of help you go, okay, well, if this is here, then that must be there, and therefore this must be a dwarf planet. And then you sort of cross things out. So it's also a writing game, right? So they give you a pad, you cross things out, you circle things, you write stuff down, you write down all your clues, etc. And so the app is essentially the game master that says, okay, these are all the sectors and what's in all of the sectors, and it keeps that secret. And for each player, it will give them a certain amount of information at the start of the game. And this is one thing that I really like about the game design, is that for me, playing with my family, the starting information gives you a little bit of a handicap. So for example, as a really young child that wants to play the game, you can select youth and it'll give them a lot of starting information, right? So they'll be able to circle and cross out more things in the game. Whereas if you're really confident and you know the game back to front, you can choose like expert and you get like 0 or genius, which gives you like 0 information at the start.
Which is how I played it the first time. So basically, I was playing it with Ralph. Ralph had already played it a bunch of times, and he said, I'm going to give you the handicap. And I went, no, it's fine. And he says, no.
Seriously.
Seriously.
You need it.
You're going to need it.
For the first time, you definitely need it.
Yeah.
I also like the fact that with this game as well, the game master, there are certain rules that you don't know that are in play until that's what so
yes,
you can ask for information. So on your on your turn, what I also love about is that you can ask for different pieces of information.
Yes.
You can ask about a range of sectors, or you can ask individual sectors. And what's great about this game is that the more specific you get, the more time that you spend doing that thing.
That's right.
Like you have a telescope that's looking at one sector of space, it has to stay very still for a very long amount of time. Thematically fits really well. But or you can say, okay, but the person at the back of the queue always gets first priority. So that it's always their turn. So if I spent 7 sectors trying to look at specific pieces of information, okay, but now Damien can spend 3 turns getting a rule plus a broad sweep and stuff. But what's also great about it is that as you move your telescopes, you're looking at different parts of the sky because you're moving around the night sky, or the sky is moving around you more specifically. And because of that, it's like, well, once I use my 7 time to get, I cannot ask any more information about this particular piece of the sky because I'm on the other side of the world to it at the moment. I can't see it. Yeah. And so not only that, the game also gives you little academic things where it's like, hey, so we should also point out, you win the game by actually getting the most amount of points. Even though it's called Search for Planet X, even if you find Planet X first, that's not game. Like the game gets, everyone else gets one more round.
That's right.
To try and like lock in their theories. Yeah. And so you get points. Like obviously the first one to find Planet X gets like 10 points. Second gets 8. But throughout the game, there are these little academic conventions that we all attend.
Yes.
And we put our theories about, okay, in Sector 3, I think that's actually a comet. But then if you're the first one to put that in there, you'll get victory points.
Extra points.
Again.
Yeah. Yes.
But if you are correct, and the next time we come around and you are correct, everyone else now knows exactly that there is a comet in there. So you're giving up information, but at the cost of getting victory points to win the game. So it's like, it's great.
And if you've never heard of this game, all of this might sound a little bit convoluted, or like to me, it did. Like when I read about this game, it was research and theories and planet searching, and I'm like, oh God, what is this? Is like, do you need a thesis to play this game? Yeah. The reality is, it's actually really simple to learn, and the theme is married beautifully with the mechanics and the concept in the game.
100%.
Yeah.
So it's really like it's not don't let the sound of it intimidate you. Like I've played it with my whole family now. They all loved it. I think it's a fantastic game.
Yeah, the thing I love with the research paper mechanic is that there is a point, and I think it was because there was someone who did look far ahead, and there were a couple people who then had just moves available, because effectively when you're behind someone else who has decided to look far ahead, you basically get actions, and it's like, I'm going to do stuff.
Yeah.
And you get to a point, you go, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to release this garbage paper and just say, yeah, I know stuff.
But what's great about it is that you don't actually get punished for releasing wrong information, because you're just releasing a theory.
You do get slightly punished in that you have a limited set of tokens that you can put in as theories.
But
it's a small punishment.
Yeah,
really.
but it's like, but I found that I've never once used all of my theory tokens, and I found that towards the end of the game, you're just like, I'm just going to chuck this on there because maybe it's this.
Yes.
But yeah, I will say that this game is the epitome of what we call in the biz a multiplayer solitaire game, which is there's going to be a lot of time in this game of that we don't directly affect each other, right? In the sense of when I'm looking at the sky, it doesn't change the sky for you. You change your position based on where it is. And the things that we do affect each other is, okay, well, if I put the my research paper, my theory here to say, I think this is what's here. Okay, but that doesn't affect me from doing anything. A lot of this game is going to be spent with your heads down in your notebook, writing notes. And it is the funniest thing. This game is the epitome of, we will literally spend 20 minutes towards the end of the game, especially putting our heads down, writing our notes. Like, yeah, okay. And then someone just goes, how the hell did I figure? Like, they have no idea how they got to this logic point.
Yeah, I mean, like, the thing is that the game design is determined at the beginning in that, the information's all there, but it's hidden, right?
Yeah,
so that can't change. That is static.
Absolutely.
The bits that involve interaction is, and this is purely optional, right? You can write down what other people are searching for or what actions they're taking on their turn.
Absolutely,
you won't know the result, but the part of the fun is trying to deduce, why on earth did they search in that sector in that turn, and then later on they searched here? Like, what does that mean?
Why did they put a theory into that particular
Why did
zone?
they put a theory there after they searched these two things?
You say it's multiplayer solitaire, but you haven't played it with me. Because when I played it with Ralph, I was just like, he's searching in a section. And I said, yeah, you found a gas cloud there too. Yeah. And he's looking at me and go, it's a gas cloud, I'm telling you.
Yeah,
so
you can make it
just
even more like a bluffing and lying game, right? We could totally bring that element into it.
Absolutely, you can. And I love that as well. And the other thing I love Search Planet X. It's back here. It's actually my favorite deduction game at the moment. Like, it's really good.
Yeah.
It doesn't get played nearly enough because it does take about 55 to an hour. Like,
it doesn't have to. I mean, you can play the shorter variant of the game.
Which I have a few times, and it still takes about 45 minutes because you
spend
a lot of time.
That's fair.
But I will say that one of the funny things that we do is that when someone goes, I'm going to have a shot at Planet X, right? We put the phone on loudspeaker and you do the app and you have to put their thing in and it goes, do 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 do, right? And if they get the yes, they're like, yes. But we had a game where two people did it and they both failed.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm going to put it in. And if you
buzz is really...
But if you fail your guess at Planet X, it means that the game doesn't end. When it comes back to your turn, you can have another ping.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Absolutely.
But you've just put everyone on notice that you think that you're probably going to get it. So everyone starts going, oh, crap, now I need...
Yeah, it's the race to the finish.
This is the epitome of the game of, I'm sorry, guys, I'm just trying to work this out. This is like, every time it's like, I'm so sorry, just give me a minute, I'm just trying to work this out. This is not a game you really want to play with action... analysis paralysis kind of people, because they will be like, oh, I can figure it out, just give me 30 more seconds.
That's
like
true.
It can happen, but I will say that it's I love it.
One thing that is bad that can happen, which has happened to us as well, is if you mess up one thing, but you carry on, assuming that information was correct, you can be 5 turns later going, oh, it's broken. Oh, that can't be possible. And then you have to like undo a bunch of stuff, which can be super frustrating.
Especially if you don't use pens for this.
Do not use pens.
Do not use pens.
Yes.
That's the risky version of this game.
That's very risky.
You only get one sheet of paper and you're allowed to go again.
Love this game. I think design is elegant. It's married perfectly with the theme. It's a clever mechanic. It's very unique. Highly recommend it.
Yeah.
There is also a new, not a new edition, but like a spin-off version of the game where apparently you're searching on an island. I'd be curious to give that one a go as well.
I'll have to have a look and see.
Yeah. It's
also semi-related, maybe just because the theme's a little bit similar. But I'm keen to play. There's a game called SETI that's been getting a lot of buzz lately as well.
Yeah.
I know it's probably completely different mechanics,
completely
but
different.
the theme,
100%.
the theme, I think
It's
is really
a heavy,
fun.
It's a heavy Euro sort of
Search
game.
for
Yeah.
extraterrestrial
It is, yeah.
intelligence. But anyway, yeah, great theme.
Well, we'll have to hit up James, our friend, because he's got a copy of it. We'll have to get a copy of it.
Very
I
good.
think, well, of course he
Yeah.
does.
When in doubt, James has a copy.
Absolutely. Generally, if it's was it brown and beige, it's probably Damo. If it's the new hotness, it's probably James.
Even
Oh,
if
heavy
it's,
in Euro,
even if it's
James.
brown and beige,
Yeah,
James probably
James.
has a copy too.
He's got everything.
Anyway,
It's
we're
got
going to
everything.
move on. So that was Search from Planet X. That's an absolute classic of a game. We're going to talk about one final game before we get to our gateway game of the week, because Damien and I, we had a chance at the MacArthur Board Gamers meetup on Friday to play a classic. We got to play Clans of Caledonia. Which
Not
is
quite brown and beige. It's
Not
green.
quite-
And, it's
Green?
green and beige.
green and
beige.
beige. It is a heavy Euro sort. It is a heavy Euro style game. It's one of these Euro style games, which is we are basically trying to make the lands, populate the lands, make sheep, grow wheat, grow farms, do all this kind of stuff. And we are essentially in classic Euro style, i.e., like Agricola, all these kind of things. Basically, be the wealthiest clan at the end of the day. How do you make money? Well, you make money from, each of your clans have a different asynchronous kind of, asymmetrical sort of power. Asymmetric, that's what I'm thinking of, asymmetrical sort of power. So like, for example, I was playing a clan, my whole thing was that I made, out of wheat in the game, I made alcohol. So my whole thing was I had a brewery, so that I had to, put alcohol into my brewery and I had to age it, so I couldn't touch it for a couple of turns. But when I brought it out, I'd get bonus money for it. The money in this game is super rare. It is a game in which we start the game with approximately $60. Each turn, you're going to get about 25 of that back in different income. I was literally told at the beginning by James and by Damien, you are not going to have enough money for the rest of the game. I hope you enjoyed having $60. It is going to be enough. You'll never
Last
get that
time
money.
you'll ever see that.
You'll never
much
see
money.
that money again. The game plays really, really simply in classic Euro style, is that you have basically you can do as many things throughout the round as possible. It's only played over 5 rounds. Basically, you're trying to get contracts. Those contracts are like, hey, we want you to bring in 2 sheep, 2 wheat, and a cow, right? For example, or milk from a cow. So like, okay, there are 5 rounds in the game. What are you doing? You are literally building those farms and those things to be able to fulfill contracts. When you fulfill contracts, you get victory points, and depending on what you have produced out there, you can sell stuff and get income for having different things on the board. So, for example, miners working the mountains, for example, are selling ore. You've got people who are in the forest, lumberjacks, cutting down wood, so they're getting you money as well. So then you've got animals giving you wheat. You've got cows who are giving you milk. But what if you need steaks? Well, maybe you can off the cow so that you can get a steak, which is great. But then you've removed a cow from the game board, right? All this kind of stuff. And there is no limit to how many actions you can do on a turn. You are primarily limited by 2 things. One, how much money you have, because for example, to do a farm, you have to put wheat out, and wheat's really expensive. It costs about 18
to put wheat out,
which is very expensive. Or maybe you go the cheap option. I'm going to put out sheep, for example, and sheep will produce me wool, which I can sell, but just the cheapest thing in the game. Now, I've been talking about money, and this is something that Damien talked about when we talked about Star Tycoon in a previous episode. He mentioned that the game Clans of Caledonia has got a stock market, and this is the central mechanic that brings Clans of Caledonia to life, which is all of the stuff that we produce in the game. There is a central stock market that you buy and sell to, and if I buy to it, I can get it at the current rate, and it moves it all around the board. We have 7 different things that we can sell, and so this is how we get money and we get income, because essentially anything that we didn't sell for contracts, if I don't need it to fulfill a contract, I'm probably going to try and sell it to get the money from it so that I can buy more stuff going forward. And at its core, obviously there are things that there are upgrade paths that we are trying to do, such as we need to be able to get more merchants so that we can go to the stock market more. We're trying to get better boats so that we can cross rivers and lakes so that we can make farms further away. There are different ways of scoring victory points at the end of the game, such as just having goods in your hand, having different connected cities around the place. So there's a little board that we're fighting for control over, because the cheap spots will always be bought first. And if you're listening to me talk at the moment, you're going, wow, it sounds very Euro. It is the epitome of like a proper like economy game where you have a stock market and you're making stuff. And I loved it. It was one of those crunchy games where it took us about 2.5 to play with a teach.
With a
which was all right.
teach,
With a
yeah.
teach,
Oh, with a
2.5.
teach is
So yeah,
pretty
it was
reasonable.
pretty good. If you've played a lot of these kind of games before, you'll pick it up very quickly. It took me pretty quickly to pick up.
I'll say one thing worth pointing out is that it's very much in the Terra Mystica.
Yes.
World. So it's a hex board. When you place your meeples down, doesn't matter which one, you're also wary about where you're placing it. So you have distance restrictions. So you can't just go around and just place them anywhere. You have to place them adjacent. And then when you need to cross a river or a lock, that's where you then need to increase your distance. The other thing to keep in mind as well is that when you're building near opponents, and invariably you will end up having to build near opponents, when you build next to them, you get a bonus. So for instance, if I build anything next to an opponent's cow, for instance, that means I can go to market, and the bonus that I get is I get whatever the thing I've built next to.
So you can get 2 milk.
So I can. So no, I can get up to 3.
What?
So as long as I
That
have
sound
enough
very
merchants,
Terra Mystica
yeah,
with the bone adjacency
exactly right.
bonuses,
Yeah,
It's very Gaia project as well,
Yeah.
because you're essentially
Yes.
Yeah.
building map presence, because if I build here, that means Damo is going to have to build there, which means I can build next to him and immediately go to market and buy that stuff, which
But
will allow me to fulfill the contract.
unlike Terra Mystica and Gaia Project, where there is this like delayed response in doing that. In Clans of Caledonia, because the map is so small,
It's so small.
it's just it happens. It can almost happen the following turn. So every time you're putting units out, you're always worried about your opponent building next to you and getting that benefit, and then modifying the stock market. So for instance, there was a point in the game where I needed wheat. James just went straight up and just bought as much wheat as he could. He then inflated the cost of wheat. It then meant I was $1 short. So I went ahead and built in a spot near him so that I could gain the benefits of the cows that he was putting on the board afterwards. But the other thing that I did doing that was that I then started using up all the cheap land that was available, because when you put something out, you're not just paying for the cost of the good, you're paying for the cost on the land as well. And some pieces of land are quite expensive.
Generally, they're the wild ones. So, like, if you want to build one thing, like, hey, this piece of land can only do farms. The cost of building on that piece of land may be $2, which is not.
Yeah.
Or you may have a land that is, this is a mountain, a forest, and a farmland. Take your pick, but you'll have to spend $8, which doesn't sound like a lot, but
It's a lot.
it's 75%. When we're talking like margins of like, you have a total of $35 to spend this round. You're like, I've got no money to do anything.
That stock market mechanic is the game. Like, you don't see it much in the first round, but from like later in the
round
second
2
round
and 3
onwards,
went big.
all of a sudden you're seeing goods just plummet in value, and people are just buying it, because they can. Or you'll see someone just go, look, I've got no choice. I need this to fulfill one contract.
I did that. That was me in round 2.
And that's just and that is just controlled by the scarcity of people buying.
Right.
The more that I buy, so if
The
I
more
buy,
expensive it gets.
the more
And
that I
then-
sell,
and
the,
then
the cheaper it is.
A couple of things worth pointing out. So the contracts that you're taking, you actually get paid to take contracts at the beginning of the game. By the end of the game, it costs you $15 to take a contract.
So in round 1, they're like, hey, take a contract, here's $5.
Right.
In round 2, take a contract, $0. It's free. In round 1, it's $5, then $10, then $20 in the last round.
That's 15. So it goes 5, 10, then 15.
15, was it?
But then the other really, really interesting thing, which was tricky to follow initially, but they do have a board which allows you to do it. We just messed it up a little bit, but we corrected it. Is every time you fulfill a contract, there are 3 types of goods that, like, sometimes when you fulfill a contract, you would just get points, or you would just get hops, and hops equate to 1-to-1. Sometimes you get the ability to perform a free upgrade. Sometimes you just get straight cash. But the other thing, the other thing that's common on these contracts is there are 3 types of goods. So there's tobacco, sugarcane, and cotton. These are not real goods in the game. They just represent 3 counters that you maintain on the board. At the end of the game, whichever one of those 3 is rarer is worth more points at the end of the game. So when you're taking contracts, you're also looking at what other people have, and you're going, well, I don't want that contract because tobacco is quite common across the board.
So you're gonna get
It's not going to be worth my effort. But then all of a sudden someone flips a cotton. It's like, I want that one. But then you're looking at what is it going to take for me to get that cotton? So I've specialized in sheep, and that one requires whiskey. It's like, how much is it going to cost me to then like convert?
It's not even that. It's also the fact if you go, well, cotton just came out, and cotton is only 2 pips behind tobacco. And if I finish that cotton contract to get the end of game victory points, it actually pushes it up 5 pips. And now immediately, for me finishing that contract, it becomes the second valuable one, not the most valuable one. So you're literally like got this early game push of like get as many contracts as you can done because points are points. Then as you get to the end of the late game, you're like, not only is it more expensive, you're like, is it even worth my time?
You got to pick the right ones.
To give you an idea, in this game, the rough like victory point score, right? James won on about 140-ish. Damo came second on about 130, and IK was like 5 or 6 points behind him, like low 120s. I legitimately thought I was out of this game until the end of the game, where I went, all right, James had about 9 contracts finished.
No, it was 7. We had 7
and
apiece.
6, but I only had 4 contracts finished. And I'm only ended like 20 points behind him. How? Because I just actually, in the last round, had a massive turn of being able to produce and just stockpile these advanced goods of whiskey, which was my clan. At the end of the game, they're just worth 3 points for every single whiskey one that we needed to produce. Yeah. So I was just rolling in cash and rolling in whiskey and selling stuff. And so the game, like, we're not going to spend much more time on it because I want to get to Wilmot's warehouse here, but I will say that this was a game that I did not expect to enjoy as much as I did, because I saw it and I'm like, well, it's like Terra Mystica, and it seems like Damo did say
what he's saying is that once again he didn't listen to me.
No. Game. You said let's play Clans. I went, let's go for it. I didn't know what.
You didn't have high hopes.
Not that I didn't have high hopes. I didn't know what was different.
Yeah,
I couldn't spot the intricate differences at a glance.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I played it that I started to go, oh. I see. So this, again, we weren't the hugest fans of Star Tycoon in previous podcasts. And part of the reason why I didn't like it was the stock market just felt unsatisfying to use. I'm like, what's the point of using the stock market when, especially in a game of, like with multiple players, it never felt like there was a use for the stock market, because goods would literally go up and immediately come screaming down because people were immediately transferring them into other goods straight away. Whereas, so it was a stock market of transferring goods. Like, hey, 1 green makes 2 red. So you would always go, well, I'm just going to get rid of my green for 2 red because why would I not want extra resources? Where in this game, it was actually monetary value. Yeah. So it's like, hey, if I buy 3 wheat right now, the value of wheat is 4. I don't buy it for 4, then 5, then 6. I buy them all at 4, then bump the price of wheat by 3 peeps, which now means the price is 7. So I got the value of it. So it means, and this stock market felt so fun to use. It felt like, right, I'm going to do this. I can do that. Great. Crap. Damo just bought wheat and now but it felt like that, but he knew that he was waiting for it to be a specific value, and he's just bumped the goods and gone, sorry, now you have to figure out a way. And it felt satisfying that if you could get a good deal, or if you could sell it at a time where you're like, I've just seen that Damo's stocking up on steak, I'm going to just drop the price so he can't sell it, and I'm going to grab the benefit of him before it. Right? Yeah. And that's why I'm like, okay, this game now was really hitting that sweet spot. It was really in that zone of like, this is what you want a game to be. Tight, crunchy, but not too crunchy. Just like right in that zone. So
yeah, sounds awesome.
Anyway, that was Clans of Caledonia. We really liked it. That's an older game, but look, I really enjoyed it, and I'm really looking forward to playing that again.
Yeah, for anyone who's looking for it, there was a Kickstarter for an expansion for it, a long-awaited expansion. At the time of the recording, I believe they're still accepting late pledges. If not, it just means that it's going to be in print again soon. So hopefully sometime this year it should be available on shelves.
Absolutely.
Fingers crossed.
All right, well, let's go from the heavy, crunchy games. Let's go to some light, fun, banter games. Let's go to our gateway game of the week, which is this week is Wilmot's Warehouse. It's here right in front of us if you are watching on the YouTube. If you're not watching on YouTube, go over there and like and subscribe. Only about 10% of the people who actually watch and listen to our podcast are actually subscribed to our podcast. So if you're doing that, make sure you hit the like, subscribe button down below, because we'd love to try and get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube by the end of the year. So anyway, moving on to Wilmot's Warehouse. This is a game that came out last year, or the end of last year, I should say. And Damo, we're going to pass it to you because you were the one who really wanted us to play it. And let's get into it, hey?
Yeah, Wilmot's Warehouse is a game where it's not really a game. It's an activity.
Yeah, it's weird. It's such...
It's a team activity.
It's a team... Honestly, it's... I think the way I described it to my daughter's occupational therapist is, I said, it's a game you need here for the clinic. It is not really a board game. It will be a board game that will allow kids to come out of their shell and tell stories, but it also has this wild memory element, which basically all kids, and even more so, I know my two kids that are on the spectrum, their memory is just astounding. It blows my mind. And it'll be a game that they'll just feel really good playing because I'll have a ton of fun, and then the memory element just completely fits. So much so that now my kids OT has asked to borrow it. So this is where this is going next week.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's
going
great
into
to
a
hear.
clinic for them to try out.
Oh, wonderful.
Anyway, so what is the game? Wilmot's Warehouse, everyone at the table is playing basically warehouse hands, okay? So we have this, it starts off as an empty board. What we have in front of us now is actually the completed state of our previous game. But essentially the board will start completely empty. And there are 1, 2, 3,
7.
4, 5, 6, 7. So it's a 7x7 grid. And at the beginning of the game, we will have in the regular mode, there are more difficult modes.
We're just going to talk regular mode.
We'll talk about regular mode.
Mm-hmm.
But you will have, at the bottom of the board, you will have 5 days of the week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And the goal, and what's going to happen is that every day there will be 7 tiles, upside down, stacked in front of every single day. That is the beginning board state. And the goal is everyone around the table will take 1 tile at a time, starting with Monday. You flip the tile over, you show it to everyone at the table, and you start the story. And that story will typically be, here's what we store in the warehouse. So in our case, our first one was squashed pistachios. I'll get
grab it. It basically looked like
I don't know how well this is going to translate.
It looked like a Pac-Man squashed vertically with a little like a brown tongue.
Yeah.
And we decided that was off-colored pistachios.
So, the only rule is the first one has to go right bang in the middle of the warehouse, but it goes upside down, and this is where the memory element starts to come in. So you're constantly going, okay, off-colored pistachios, great. Then the next person flips the next card over, and they should again repeat the same thing. So now one, I believe the next one was the stairs. So we said, okay, so you need stairs to reach the pistachios because they're on a higher shelf.
Yeah.
And that's where it kind of keeps going, and that goes round and round and round until you go through all the tiles. We played with one of the sort of beginner variants, and that is at the beginning of, so starting from Tuesday on up to Friday, at the beginning of those days, management comes in and they have an alternate task for us, and that will modify. It will do a couple of things. It will either modify the game state. So we had one day we had to shift things on the board.
One day where we had to only put things around the edge of the board.
That's
for
right.
Some reason.
And then there are other days, and then some will say, well, you can your clues
Wet
have
stuff.
to be
Wet stuff, yeah.
your clues have to be themed in a particular way.
So the next 7 clues, or we had a choice. So we had to flip one up, and it was either, hey, this can either be, the next 7 tiles can either be medieval stuff, wet stuff, or spooky stuff. Take your pick. And we, obviously, the first one came out as blue, so we went, all right, the next 7, they're all wet stuff.
It's all wet stuff.
That's right.
But there's what results is that you end up in this state where you have 35 tiles, all face down in front of you on a board. Then after Friday is done, management says, okay, so where did you guys put everything? This is where we all get so there is a stack of just cards, and each of these cards map 1-to-1 to the various tiles that are in the game. Now, we've only seen 35 of these tiles. There is a bag, so
give it a good clink. Oh, there it is.
All right,
Clinky.
There is a huge bag of tiles.
There's at least another 60 in there.
Oh, there's got to be at least another couple games worth of tiles in there. So, basically, as you can imagine, so we get these cards, and I've just got a portion of the stack here. They map 1-to-1 with all the tiles, and then we start a timer. Collectively around the table. Now, this is not done individually, so we can sort of share information and things like that. But you're going through all these cards, and you're trying to place them face up where you think you remember the various tiles were placed on the board.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you think you're done, when we think we're all good, we hit stop, and you add 10 seconds to the time for every tile you get wrong. And that's it. And then the final score, you look it up in the back of the book, and it will tell you whether, like, how successful you are.
So to summarize, 95% of the game is telling stories with tiles.
Yes.
And then the last 5% is where you can get that competitive itch out, where you can say, okay, let's quickly try to see how much of the story we remember by placing all the tiles where we think they are. And then you verify and you get a score.
And so to give you an idea, when we talk about story, what you're actually telling the story of is, well, we are a warehouse. So what are we storing? And then our story became, well, okay, we started with dry, off-colored pistachio nuts. And then we happened to get an off-colored orange soup. So we're like, well, this orange, what looked like an orange soup. Now, I also said it looked like an ashtray with a cigarette. It also kind of looked like, a whole bunch of other things. And we ended up deciding that's what it was. But we had an entire column dedicated to this whole idea. Like, okay, well, we have an off-color, we have basically a dysentery soup, essentially. And then we had one that looked like
Toxic soup.
a nappy or a diaper for our American friends. I was like, well, obviously you're going to crap your pants. And then we had one that obviously looked like poo. So we're like, well, that's obviously the poo that came out. And then we had like, well, and here's the ointment you're going to need, right? And this story was like, that's the gross part of our story. But then we also had a moment like, well, we shifted to the other parts of the warehouse where we had, well, this looked like a lock and key. So this is the private offices behind it. This is the manager's office back here. And then all of a sudden we were talking about, well, remember that Christmas party that happened last year and the regrets from the Christmas party, right? And so
smashed that aquarium and all the fish, fell on the floor.
Can I just say, right off the get-go, I loved this.
Yeah, it was really good.
I saw this on Shut Up and Sit Down and around the place. I'm like...
Yeah, me too.
I was like, nah, it's okay. But I'm like, how fun is this really going to be? And we played it and I went, oh no, this is great.
This is actually really good.
Because it was kind of sold as a memory game meets a story, right? That's how you kind of sold it. And then we also roped my wife, Georgie, into it. She just come back after a really long day. And she goes, I said, look, do you want to sit down and play it? And she goes, are you sure? And we went, yeah, bring it. And so she did, right? And then Damo goes, it's a memory game. And we're going to be checking it. She's like, oh God, this is going to be not good. And by the end of it, she goes, thank you so much. That was so much fun. Like, it's not really a memory game.
You don't feel like you're having to memorize things. Your brain isn't working that hard to memorize things. Your brain is a creative part that's activated where you're coming up with cool stories.
If I gave you 35 tiles, showed you 35 tiles, and then flipped them over,
you wouldn't remember.
I don't think you'd remember.
No.
But because we told a story around it.
Well, there's a memory technique, a memorization technique, which is like the room palace or something like that, where you traverse a room and each room, a house and each room is a thing that you're trying to remember. Yeah. I think this is a similar concept, right? You're training your brain to remember stuff by assigning a story to each thing that you're trying to remember.
Yeah. To give you an idea, it took us about 25 minutes to get to create this. It was 25 minutes to put the tiles onto the board. And as Damien said, we each had an individual stack of these cards, right? So one to one, we didn't all have them. I'm going to say, I don't know about you guys, but I felt like we did a pretty good job. I reckon I could have remembered nearly all of them.
Yeah.
Now, what was really interesting in our game, we actually got 3 of them wrong. So one of the managers was move 2 tiles from a row to another row. Yeah. And we had one where we were all convinced that we had one that looked like oven mitts, and we all were convinced it was on that edge. Yeah. So much so that we created bits of the story around the fact of like, these are not oven mitts, but they were just safety mitts. And so then we had pincers that we were, using to grab precious and hot gems or whatnot. And then we found the gem and we flipped them over at the end and we all went, that was the socks. Yeah. And we all went, none of us forgot. No. We all just believed that's where it was, because for the whole game we had talked ourselves into that's where it was.
In a weird way, much like what we said about Search for Planet X, one wrong move a little bit earlier on, and then had a little bit of a ripple effect where we made then a bunch of other wrong decisions.
Absolutely, yeah. And that was so. This game, I like what you said. So when it's an activity, it's like I put it in that sort of game category as games like Hues and Coups. Like those kind of games where it's like, the things like The Mind, right? Where The Mind is a game, but it's not really a game, right? There's something here that we're going to get around to do. Whereas the Wilmot's Warehouse to me is the exact same feeling that I get, which is this is a game but it's not really a game. It's more of a, let's create a story about this fictional warehouse that we're all managers in, and let's then, like, what I loved was the bits of, like, we would pull an icon out, and there were times where we'd all collectively go, that is that one, and we all went, yes, that is 100%. But then there was one time, for example, where Damo pulled over the trash icon that we ended up having it, but because he pulled it over a specific way, we all went, well, that's a hair comb, and he goes, no, I don't think. I think it's the trash can that goes next to here so that we can dispose of it, and we all went, obviously, yeah, of course. Wow, that's great.
I really liked when we pulled out, we all agreed this thing was a macaroni and it should live with the soup. But because we were constrained by the manager, we couldn't put it next to the soup. So it turned into a pipe and it lived somewhere else.
And then, but we all remembered exactly that's where that pipe went.
Absolutely.
We all knew that
the macaroni pipe.
Yeah. Look, the game itself is fantastic. Look, this is not, for anyone listening and they're looking and you like Euros or your worker placement games and all that. So do I. I love those games. I have far too many of those games. But I will say that I've been gravitating more and more to these activity style games because these are the type of games that I can put in front of my family after dinner when people are just not feeling it. You know, like my son's just come back from training. You know, maybe we've had a rough day with the kids. Maybe I've had a terrible day at work.
My wife, who was literally
my
wife, not you, but
I love that you're pointing at me.
She was sitting where you were sitting, right? The exact same thing, like you said.
Whereas I can put this in front of them. I can get past the groans of like, oh, we're going to play memory games. Oh, I don't like memory games, all that sort of stuff. So no, let's give this a go. The teacher's 5 minutes. It's literally, I said, here are the tiles. We're going to take one tile at a time, and then we're just going to go from there.
I was going to say, the teacher's 2 minutes, my friend. It's not 5.
It's super quick.
And then you tell the story. You get into the game. The game presents itself so brilliantly. The artwork is lovely. And all of those really niceties about the game just means you just basically get completely soaked into it. And then 20 minutes later, if that, depending on how much time you want to spend telling a story and having a laugh, because that's what you're doing. You're having fun with the game. The game takes as long as you want it to take, which I absolutely adore.
There was one of the managers was like, take a break. Don't talk about the game. You have to just talk about something else that happened today. Yeah. Just, you're not allowed to talk. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. But then at the end, then you have that competitive thing. So, all right, we got to say how good our memory is because it's not you playing a mental puzzle where like you may do in a Euro. This is not that. This is like, okay, so we've done a really good job telling this story. I reckon we've got this. Let's go. And then you're trying to match all
it's
the
the
tiles.
moment of catharsis of like you've been building up this story for so long and you haven't had a chance to like really just lay it all out and go through it in one go, and that's the end bit.
It's almost like, how well do you remember your story? That's the truth. There's like, hey, how well do you remember this warehouse that you put together? How well do you know it? And it's like, it really does make you, in a weird kind of way, make you feel like an expert at your job. You know those times like when you're in your job, you're 3 or 4 years in and you just know where, like, you're like a Bunnings worker, right? It's like, hey mate, where are the nails? 3 rows down, 5 shelves up, and then right at the end, right? You know where everything is located, etc. And this gives you that exact same, that catharsis end it is exactly that. It's like, I picked up and think, I know that's exactly, boom, that's exactly there.
That's right.
That must go there. Remember, that was the story.
Yeah, exactly
The thing about this, and this is why I say, to me, this is not a board game. This is just a brilliant activity that comes in a box that's shaped like that, looks like a board game. It falls in that same category of your that's not a hat, of your anomia.
Yep.
Where it feels like it's a mental trick.
Yep.
And you're having fun.
Yep.
And that's the most important part in the end, is that we had a lot of fun playing this. We had a ton of fun in like 20 minutes. Okay. And it's absolutely one of those games where you could play it in 20 minutes, say I'm going to get a cup of tea, and while you ask your kids to just reset and go again, because it's just a bunch of tiles under 5 days of the week, and that's it, and you go. Brilliant. Game's brilliant. I think it's a cracker. I
agree.
We as a podcast wholeheartedly recommend Wilmot's Warehouse. If you can get a copy of it, you will not regret. This is a game that you can play with 2 players. You can make it harder by adding in more tiles. There are more advanced managers that you can do that change up the gameplay completely.
Yeah, there was one that I read. I just pulled one of the more advanced ones, and it's like you can only give out clues, or you can only tell your story using single syllable.
You don't have enough
grunting.
Caffeine. Yes, like, this too would go roof. So, anyway, we highly recommend Wilmot's Warehouse. If you get a chance, we I am so surprised with how many of these games I'm really enjoying. Like, we knew that it was going to be good, but I was surprised at how good it was.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right, we're going to now move on to our final subject for this week's podcast, which is this week is our top 3 predictions of 2025. These are all going to be board game related predictions for the year ahead. We thought, well, you know what? It's the start of the year. Let's put our brains to some use and see if we can look ahead and look into that crystal ball and find some of those predictions that we think we have. We've never done this before, so we'll see how we are going to go with this one. So I did say at the beginning of the podcast that Mr. Ralph did leave his mark, so he did write a couple down here, and I'm just going to read them off very quickly for you because I think they are classic. Ralph's first one says, by the end of this year, we will see our first legacy biodegradable board game. I think, with the way that we're going through to plastic, I think it's a good one. He also did say, the other one that he did say, it will be announced that Gloomhaven will be adapted for the big screen, featuring The Rock as the Cragheart and Jack Black as the Tinkerer. They will meet Neil Patrick Harris at the Sleeping Lion for a new adventure. This will be seen as either a blessing or a curse to some audiences. However, there is no denying that in a classic Gloomhaven style, this may be a hit or a miss. Boo! He's still making me facepalm from a million miles away, wherever he is at his house at the moment. Anyway, those are Ralph's predictions. But what we are going to do now, however, is we are going to go around the circle one by one. We're going to put in our predictions. I will say I have a couple of funny ones I'm going to say for the end that I think I'd like to do, but I do have a couple of actual.
Are we going to go one at a time? Or
let's go one. Well, it's up to you. What do you guys? I think we go one at a time.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
We
We go one at a time. We'll start with Leo. We'll go. And we'll work our way clockwise. We'll go around.
I think you may regret this because I think I'm going to start with my doom and gloom just to
that's
get it out
fine.
of the way.
That's okay.
And then I'll move on to my happier predictions.
That's right. Doom and gloom's fine. We'll get happier as it is. We'll start low and we'll work to the end.
Well, look, I mean, just not to get super political here, but just to state facts. There's been some recent developments in the US. There's going to be tariffs put on China, amongst other countries. And so I don't think this is much of a stretch for me to say, because there's been quite a few articles on this in the board game kind of media and coverage, that board games are going to get more expensive in 2025 as a result. And so that is my prediction, is that we're going to be potentially shelling out more for games.
25% more expensive? Who knows?
Well, I mean, let's see how publishers sort of either try to absorb some or all of this. From what I've read, it seems unlikely because the margins are already razor thin. So I'm guessing a lot of it's going to get passed on to consumers. A lot of publishers are probably going to try to seek other, factories and distribution centers outside of China to try to, make up for it. So I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of, developments from it. But I think in the short term, we might see board game prices go up.
I think I'm kind of hoping the result of that may see it, particularly for us, like locally in Australia, alternate freight paths for games coming to us to bypass that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an unfortunate. It is an unfortunate situation. I mean, we're seeing it already now. There was a game fulfilled recently, Molly's House, by Whirligig Games, so same production house that did John Company and Pax Premier and such. Their ship was late. It missed the Friday docking.
By a day.
Yeah, literally a day.
And
therefore,
no.
therefore no one unloaded until the Monday.
Oh.
So they got hit by the tariffs, and that's rough. That's really, really rough.
So they had to eat that one, but they did. I will say my first one does kind of come off the back of that as well. Actually, my first prediction. My first prediction is the Dice Tower is finally going to release their own Dice Tower, which will inevitably cause a black hole to implode the whole internet. That's my first. No, sorry, that's obviously my first comedy one. No, my actual prediction though is going to be that I think we're going to start to see a return to wooden components over plastic injection molding, and I say with the surge of tariffs across the world, especially from the North Americans, companies are going to look towards, I reckon, margins, like looking at their margins and potentially lowering costs. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see cubes and tokens start to replace more injection molding. Now, I know a lot of the injection molding does take place inside of the Chinese market, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the American publishers go, we just can't justify doing 12.5 kilos worth of plastic freight coming into the American. So therefore, maybe we'll start to see cardboard tokens / wooden tokens again start to make a bit of a resurgence over the next 12 to 18 months is what I think is probably going to start to happen. Like, granted, it used to be wooden tokens were like matchsticks, where obviously were cheap, but then obviously it started to become a bit more cheaper to actually do the injection molding, because once you get one round, you can just start, the plastic is cheap and go from there. But if it's going to cost X amount of dollars more to get them into the country, I wouldn't start to see it's like, well, let's go.
Bring back cardboard standees.
Yeah, bring back
like
standees.
cardboard
I don't mind cardboard standees, but yeah, I'm curious how that's going to sit with the market. I think there's been an expectation over the years of games getting more and more polished and the production quality getting higher and higher.
Yeah.
And now we're saying, well, with the tariffs and these changes this year, it might have to go in the opposite direction.
It wouldn't surprise me. I guess the final point on that is it wouldn't surprise me if like the standard tier of, say, a Kickstarter is very much just cardboard and wooden tokens, something that will be light, cheap, and very easy for them to do, I think, with that. Anyway, that's my first prediction.
Okay. My first prediction is less gloom and doom, because this is an entertainment podcast. Jeez, you two. No, I'm gonna say one of the more obvious things, and it's quite unfortunate. I can't believe I'm going to say this. By the end of 2025, there will be 5 Gloomhaven games in the top 100, and two of them will be Gloomhaven. Because Gloomhaven's second edition is due to fulfill this year.
That shouldn't be allowed.
I
it
could
really shouldn't
What
be
are the
allowed.
other 3 then?
Jaws of the Lion.
Frosthaven, Gloomhaven first edition.
Bugs and Buttons.
Oh no, sorry, 4. Sorry, apologies. I miscounted. So I think there will be 4 Gloomhaven.
Well, there is
games.
the Bugs and Buttons one.
That one's not in the top 100.
All right, okay.
That's a very different kind of game. Too,
but it is different.
It is,
game.
but it is a Gloomhaven.
Sorry,
Gloomhaven game, yes.
Sorry, I meant 4. Yeah, look, Gloomhaven's second edition's coming out. That campaign was massive again. And Isaac Childress will no doubt have organised to have additional copies printed.
He's in the money. He's in the money.
To go to retail. And again, because Gloomhaven typically doesn't do special editions for Kickstarter, they have extras that you could typically get afterwards.
That's just basically all in.
But it's pretty much. But Gloomhaven is almost always just all in.
What rank is Frosthaven at the moment?
It's in the 50s.
It's in the 50s. Okay.
Yeah.
I will say I am not against Frosthaven and Jaws of the Lion being in the top 100. They are separate entities. I think deserve to stand on their own. But I don't think Gloomhaven.
Jaws of the Lion's just like a few more scenarios and
but like Jaws of the Lion was
Frosthaven.
Yeah, but Jaws of the Lion was always billed as, hey, you don't want to go in for the full Gloomhaven experience. Get this
Exactly. So it's like a subset of Gloomhaven.
Yeah, but
how does that factor in as a different game?
Then again, there were 2 Agricolas in the top 100. There's 2 Great Western Trails in the top 100.
That's fair.
There's 2 Dune Imperiums in the top 30.
They're 2 brass. Are both Lancashire and Birmingham?
But they are different games.
But they still significantly change things in the rules, whereas Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion doesn't change.
Well, this is why it's just prediction, though. We could talk about. All right, well, okay, that's not a bad prediction at all. I will say Frosthaven is ranked 25 at the moment.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow. Okay, there you go.
Anyway, all right, with you, Mr. Leo, for your second prediction for this year.
I have been amazed and impressed by the amount of licensed IP in board games, and I think it's just going to keep going and going, especially from video games. Like that's just been such a trend, but also from books. I mean, you just talked about Elder Scrolls. We've talked about Mistborn. I've got the Dead Cells game. I've the Stardew Valley game. Like I think that trend, like there's more gold to be mined there. I think 2025 is going to continue on that trend.
Can we actually say as well that the actual IP board games are actually Slay the Spire? They're actually pretty good.
They're actually good.
They're
actually maintaining
Dune Imperium.
Yeah.
They're maintaining a high quality bar, right?
Yeah,
and if we're broadening IP obviously to movies and books, I mean, there's a bunch like Asmodee is releasing a bunch of stuff with Lord of the Rings. At the moment, they've got the Pandemic reskin with Fellowship of the Ring coming soon. It's getting a lot of buzz. So IP's big. I guess if I had to hone in, I think video game IP's really taken off lately.
I actually disagree on that particular one. Okay. I don't think there's a whole bunch of board games that have tried to come out that were video games. I think video games struggle to make that, but I think a lot of the Elder Scrolls... Now, granted, Elder Scrolls, more RPG titles are good, but if you're going an action game like, say, for example, Assassin's Creed or... Fallout, I don't think that, but I think
that's fair. I think there's a lot of them around. Maybe there are varying levels of quality.
I think it's getting better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lately they've been getting better, and I'm waiting for when the Balatro board game will come out.
Oh
this
wow!
Year. Let's see that come out, and take over the world.
You've heard it here, folks. If that comes out, I think the podcast may cease to exist because
Can I get a cut of that? Yeah, we'll all be
They're gonna have to probably use like the card crafting system that we use in Dead Reckoning to do that. That would be ridiculous. All right, my second prediction is Shut Up and Sit Down are going to create a spin-off podcast called Get Loud and Stand Up, where Tom Brewster and Matt Lees will review the table flippability of games. And that will be, they will, have a look at, how rage-inducing is this game, and we'll have to get loud and stand up. Okay, that's why.
It cause a bit of damage if you want to flip.
Absolutely. I mean, they can.
You can just flip it digitally on what is it?
Oh no, Tabletop Simulator.
Tabletop Simulator.
Anyway, so no, that's my second comedy one. All right, I'm going to be doing that for my third one as well. I've got one more as well. No, my actual prediction is kind of going. This feels like a cop out, but I do think the second-hand market sales are going to increase exponentially over the next 12 months, as a lot of people are going to start looking to collect games at bargain prices instead of paying MSRP. For Kickstarter games, which are also now going to start taking 2 to 3 years to ship. This is more off the back of the tariffs, as well as I think people are going to start going, well, I don't want to pay full price for a board game, or as you said, I think board games are going to be getting more expensive, and there is a potential for the secondhand market to follow suit, but I do still find that you can get bargains of games from people for games that you really want to play at really good prices. And a good example is I saw a copy of Hadrian's Wall going for $20 on Facebook Marketplace. Mitch was bloody selling it for $10 today on his fire sale, right? Yeah. But like in general, you can find games at relatively good prices on secondhand markets. Your local markets are very good. The quality is generally always pretty good. I found the community to be very accommodating with people. Here in Sydney, we have a very vibrant secondhand market going on at the moment. We have groups dedicated to just doing board game trading, which is great. But I think, given what we have said, that with probably increased prices of board games, and also I think in general, a lot of people are just getting jack of bloody Kickstarter at the moment and the long wait times where, especially here in Australia, it sometimes pays to not do Kickstarter and you can buy it before the Kickstarter guys get their copies, which has happened a lot of times here in Australia. So my second prediction is I think we'll start to see more of a secondhand market start to really shape up. It's already there, but I expect it to really start to be used by a lot of people in the board gaming community. Okay. I think.
Very cool.
And look, and I say that going that we all use the secondhand community basically, but I'm expecting to start to see a lot more games start to hit the markets as people are looking to offload more games because either they're just not going to play it anymore, or B, with games like Elder Scrolls and all these other bigger games that take up so much space, I found so many people try to get rid of their games.
The amazing thing, not to digress too much on this, but the amazing thing to me is, unlike other forms of media, board games don't really get outdated, right? Like it's not like you're gonna have all these DVDs that you're gonna have nothing to do with because you don't use DVDs anymore. It'll be something that you could keep forever. So they'll just cumulatively, they'll just grow and grow and grow in collections. And then to your point, like people aren't gonna be able to store all that stuff. And so there's going to be a lot of secondhand games flowing all the time.
Yeah, I just think that with the increase in prices and stuff, I think it's going to start pushing people to search out other avenues to start finding games, and which I think in turn will just mean the more people that start looking for secondhand games realize, oh, I can get good bargains here. Why am I buying full price more often than not? I think you'll start to see a shift there. Yeah. Anyway, Damo, to your second prediction before we get into our last ones.
My second prediction is more a selfish one because I really, really want to see both of these things happen, but I've kind of combined it because I think it's wishful thinking for both of these to happen, and I can't decide which one to back, so I'm going to back both and hope for one. I think this year will be the year where either Tigris and Euphrates or Dogs of War will get a reprint.
I really hope for Tigris.
I'm hoping for Dogs of War. That's what I want. So look, both of these games, if you go through sort of like the Board Game Geek forums and such, there's always someone who knows a guy who heard a rumor in a coffee shop from their cousin that apparently one of these two games,
some guy's selling Tigris and Euphrates in Siberia.
Yeah, but someone always knows someone who found out that a reprint is about to be announced, or someone will notice that there's been a license change. Oh, there's a reprint coming, and it never happens. I'm hoping that 2025 is the year, considering how many reprints there have been over the last 24 months, especially, which just further reinforces my point where I've said so many times, board games aren't getting better. The old ones are better.
Oh, Food Chain Magnate, El Grande, they're all getting like they're pretty. I expect.
Agricola is getting a reprint.
I expect Tigris and Euphrates to get one, but I don't know. It's going to be hard.
Yes, so that is my hope. My hope is that 2025. No, prediction. One of those games, a reprint will be announced. I'm not going to say the reprint will be out.
If you had to put your name to one of them, which one would you want?
I actually think Dogs of War is more likely.
Okay.
Because
like that?
There have been so many Knizia games reprinted, and it seems like he's gone a long way back in his catalog. Now,
why does that seem familiar? Like,
Tigris,
as in I've heard about a potential. Maybe it was on the Board Game Geek forums, or maybe it was Dogs of War, but I thought it was like Cats of War or something like that.
But Dogs of War has been spoken about a little more recently.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So that's the hope.
It's a bit more buzz.
All right, Leo, let's get to your final prediction of 2025.
Yeah, my final prediction is a little bit more meta about board games, which is more about board game design. I think this is just a casual observation. I'm not deep into the board game designer space, but it definitely seems like there's a lot more tools available for board game designers, more community building around board game designers, like more indie and up and coming, and people trying to get into board game design, which I think is really healthy, right? Like, again, comparing to something like video games, you want a thriving, not just mainstream, the A tier published games, but you want a healthy, thriving sort of indie kind of game design. Self-published could be one thing. There's definitely lots of avenues for people trying to get their games out there, but it just feels like there's a really supportive community coming together. And I also could potentially jump on the AI bandwagon and say that with the advent of a lot of AI tools, that can also unlock things for board game design. Potentially it can lower some of the barriers to riffing on ideas and getting designs in, writing code for a prototype, whatever that might be. So I think 2025 is the year maybe where we might see again, like a bit of an uplift in more people getting into board game design and more indie games coming through.
There is a discussion to be had about the morality of using AI art design, which we're not going to do in this particular podcast.
Totally, that is a whole.
But that is something we have discussed, and we are going to be discussing this year because there has already been a surge in people using AI art, and whether or not there is morality. And I agree with you because it's an interesting take, because it's like people who can't do design, but they also don't have the money to pay an artist. What do you do when you look at games like Terraforming Mars, which is such a successful game, but obviously is using stock photo design, and you're just like, well, that is not a dude who paid an artist. He literally went to probably some photo stock website and went, I'm going to pay $2 for the rights to that or something like that. Maybe, who knows? But I think it's a really interesting take. I do think Kickstarter has brought down the barrier to getting interest and potentially getting that kind of stuff. I agree with you, but I also do believe that with the advent of more of these tools, you'll start to see people who go, oh, I've got an idea for a game. I can actually put together a graphics package, whether or not morally right or wrong, but that's for another discussion.
Yeah, maybe I'll sidestep that though, but I'll end on.
I know what you mean.
I'll end on a positive note in terms of calling out as well on the community side. I'll call out someone who I subscribed to on YouTube recently, a Sydney-based or Australian-based designer called Matthew Dunstan, who's designed a bunch of games, great games, and he's got a really fantastic channel where he talks about the ins and outs of board game design and based on his personal experience. He's really open and honest, even through to the point of giving a lot of his financials around what he makes as a board game designer and his royalties and things like that. So love to see that. More tools, more community, more opportunities for people who want to get their designs out there.
Yeah. All right. My final prediction, we're going to start with Heavy Cardboard. They're going to start a fitness TikTok account, journaling their tips and tricks to trimming your board game collections, keeping your board game calories in check, and ultimately providing board game thirst traps on their road to becoming fit cardboard by the end of 2025.
That is so not true, because I'm pretty sure Edward Euler has a basement full of games. Like, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I've subscribed to Heavy Cardboard. I watch a lot of their games, and there are times even he goes, I didn't even know I owned this game. So yeah.
But that's why it's my prediction. That's what he's going to do this year. He's on his way to becoming fit cardboard this year. Okay.
For some reason, that makes me think of, like, why hasn't someone invented a board game table with a built-in treadmill? so we can all get fit while playing board
There you
games.
go.
That's not bad. All right, my actual prediction for this year.
Isn't that why board games just got heavy?
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
My
Lifting from the thing to the table.
my board game. My final prediction for this 2025 is by the end of 2025, we are going to see dual versions of the Golden Gateway Trio: Carcassonne Duel, Ticket to Ride Duel, and Settlers of Catan Duel.
Can I
reckon
add in
by
like
the
a
end of 2025.
wingspan duel? Surely there's going to be a span duel.
I literally wrote down
This-
here and their titles to be but not limited to Carcassonne Duel, Ticket to Duel, and Brass Dueling Ham.
Ticket to Duel.
I put in
Dual
brass-
span.
I did think of dual span.
I'm going to burst your bubble. There are already 2-player versions of Ticket to Ride.
I know.
But is it called
Well, no,
Ticket
but
to
all-
Duel?
but of all
No.
three. But also,
Duel to
I was
Ride.
quite happy with Brass Dueling Ham. I thought that
Brass
was
dueling ham.
I thought
That's
that was pretty
clever.
funny. No,
You should
but I-
pitch that. You shouldn't have revealed it on the channel.
Yeah, it's okay. No, I do think by the end, like, look, having a look,
Patent now, isn't
like
it?
there's King of Tokyo Duel, Isle of
Yes.
Cats Duel, Azul Duel, which I think should have just been called Jewel, but like spelt with like J.
With a J.
Yeah, I think it would have been funny. I think that there's a lot of these games, but I really do think that at some point, and I think at least it'll be, maybe they won't be out by the end of this year, but I do think you're going to see an announcement of Carcassonne Duel, because basically Carcassonne Duel would become a good tile drafting game, I think. Granted, that just kind of becomes King Domino, but it could be a very, and these are good 2-player games anyway, but I just think given that so many of these games are now getting dual variants, you are going to see the Golden Gateways get one, and whether or not, I know that there are 2-player versions of Ticket to Ride, but I do think you're going to see Carcassonne Duel and potentially a Settlers of Catan Duel at the end.
I mean, the thing I find funny about this is that probably quite a few of those games play just fine with 2 players
They
already.
really do.
And look,
Carcassonne
it's not the
plays
most
great too.
it's not the most original trend, but hey, more optionality, more focus on 2-player duels.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing, right?
Look, Azul plays great at 2.
Yes.
Like Takedo, like there are
completely
so
unnecessary,
many of these
but-
games played great at 2, but it's just like, hey, it's a way that you can market the game, and
For sure.
given the fact that they are so well known, I think that you will see at least a Settlers of Catan Duel. I think you will see
Yeah.
that. So anyway, hey, Damo, let's get to you. Final one, and then let's wrap this bad boy
So
up.
my third prediction is we will see a new rise in a gaming trend. So a couple of years ago, we saw the rise of deck builders. As in, and what I mean by rise is that these mechanics already existed, but then they became repopularized in a series of games. Trick takers have been extremely popular
Yeah,
over the
that's
last
true.
12 to 18 months.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go completely left field here.
Ooh, love that.
I really think that we are going to see the next good roll and move game. I can't think.
What, like Snakes and Ladders?
Like
No.
and a Monopoly.
No,
Yeah.
no. So I've only played 2 good roll and move games.
Flamme Rouge.
That's not a roll and move.
It's basically a roll
It's
and
not.
move.
Yeah. So
It's a draw and move. It's a card game.
Formula Day. Okay, that's
Yes.
a roll and move.
Yeah.
And Zaya. They're the only 2 good roll and move games I've ever played. I would love to see a designer come up and riff on roll and move, and convince people that you don't have to be playing Candyland or Monopoly to be able to use roll and move as a mechanic.
Okay.
I would love to see it.
Love to see that in 2025.
More of a hope than a prediction, maybe?
I think a lot of his predictions were a lot of hope.
A lot
as
of
well.
hope, yeah.
Look, I think we
Hopes
can all,
and dreams.
We can all hope. Okay, so those were our 3 predictions each for 2025. Some maybe more accurate than others. Maybe we're all completely wrong by the end of this year. But you know what? Maybe
I hope I'm wrong about more expensive games. I'd love
Look,
to
yeah,
be
who
wrong.
knows? Look, I think we'll revisit this towards the end of the year, and we'll see how our predictions.
Yeah,
went.
I've already bought my copy of Dogs of War. So it's great.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. Well, you know what? I will go and buy copies of Tigris and Euphrates, and immediately it'll come into reprint. You know, that's how
Yeah.
it always happens.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to bring us to the end of episode 70 of the Board Game Gateway podcast. Thank you so much for listening to this. What is a little bit of an extra long one today, but that's okay. Not too much longer than usual, but I think we had a really good discussion here going on. If you really liked what you were listening to or watching, please make sure that you click like and subscribe on the YouTube channel. If you're listening on iTunes, leave us a 5-star, give us a review. We love all of that engagement that we have with you guys. We read all the comments. We want to get to know you, the board game community. What is one of your board game predictions for 2025? We'd love to see that in the comments down below. And until next week, I was Neva. That was Damien. That was Leo on my right. We will see you next week. And thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.